Since Marianne and Pascal, you know my thoughts very well, I think this time around I will refrain from giving that introduction that I gave to the large German-speaking group that we had. I think it will not be needed. What I basically said was this. When we engage in doing therapy, when we engage in science, when we develop a theory, we do that because we have an interest in doing that. There is a longing to do that. And we can do that because we are conscious. We can reflect on ourselves. Thus, we have two ingredients, longing and consciousness. And in that frame, we try to formulate our thoughts. And we try to formulate what it is that therapy is about and what we can do in therapy. In order to do that, we engage in an action. We do something. To do therapy, to have symptoms, is to engage in actions. Or in as much as we talk about symptoms, we would be talking about passions, Leiden in German, or substitute actions, but we still do something. When we speak about passions, we should not think that we are 100% passive. That's not the case. When we engage in a passion, we still try to do something. We still try to preserve our existence, to name the most basic feature of what it is that we're doing. And in doing and acting, even thus, if we engage in passions, symptoms, we need to create a bridge between the organism, so to speak, that we are and that which we are not, but need to have or need to get rid of. That is what life is about in a nutshell. Therapy is about helping our patients to engage in new actions, such that they, in the end, can achieve more. And what they basically want to achieve when they come to us generally is to get rid of symptoms. That's what they want. They're in pain, they're suffering, and they want to delimit, if not stop their suffering. That's why they're here. In order to do that, we need to set up a relationship, because in particular, after chronic traumatization, setting up a relationship, engaging in a relationship is the first thing to do. Without any sort of bridge between I, the therapist, and the other person, the patient, and in reverse, there is simply no encounter. Thus, we need first to meet each other. And a lot of what I call an active trauma therapy is, in its essence, trying to meet the other person. In order to do that, we have to join their world, because we, in the ideal case, have more power of action, thus we are more flexible in what we can do than the patient can do. Because being a patient in a certain sense means I lack power of action. There are things I would like to do, but I cannot do that. I do not know how to do it, or I do not dare to do it, or I'm ashamed to do it, whatever. Thus, we need a grounding in a relationship, and that relationship has as a purpose to extend the patient's, to raise the patient's power of action. That's what it's all about. Good. In this frame, I think we can discuss issues in these meetings with one another. And given that we had some clinical questions, this hour can be more clinical than the previous hour was. I would like to first address the questions that were raised, but they were raised, Kirande, anonymously. I do not know who was the one that presented two cases, including a Tamil refugee.
Yeah. Hang on. I'll just... No, it wasn't anonymous. It was Senora Rio Benito.
Oh, Maria, it was you. And then, sorry, I missed your name, Maria. You briefly presented two cases.
Mhm.
I think it would be helpful for us all if you would first present the first case and then the second and see what we can do with it. I read what you wrote,
Okay.
but please present this case to us. Let me first of all point out, these meetings are not meant to be supervisions, although it's not always clear what is exactly the boundary between a
Yeah.
supervision question and what is the more general question.
Okay.
Thus, if you can appreciate that, I would like and try to give a reaction that is also a reaction at a more global level, not specific to this case.
Yeah.
The first general idea is that this man, like anyone, is not just the here and now, he's also history. On the one hand, yes, what really counts is what we experience in the here and the now, or that which we experience and call the here and the now. Thus, we bring forth the here and the now in the framework of what we experience in the here and now.
Mhm.
How we live life, how we experience ourselves and other people and things in the world are not just defined by the present moment, but by history. That's how a person behaves, thinks, feels, longs, or whatever in the present moment is a sort of combination of what is now and what was. Now, this man clearly has a history, and that history has been such that it was most important for him to be able to tell with as much precision as he could who was on what side. This will also be a general situation in war, or let's say in Eastern Germany, in Poland, in Eastern Germany before the change in Germany, who is with the Stasi and who's not. In the Netherlands, who can I trust being a Jew and who can I not trust? Always that question. Where do I find safety? After chronic traumatization, what person can I trust and what person must I mistrust? Basically, I've learned to mistrust each and everyone. But I'm in a very difficult situation because common life cannot fare well on the basis of mistrust only. But I must mistrust. Thus, there is that double longing. I'm looking for safety. If I can tell who I can trust and who not, I can preserve my existence more. That's a defensive need. Thus, your patient has basically all chronically traumatized or severely traumatized people otherwise have learned to engage in defenses all over. I must defend myself, must defend myself. But if I do that, I cannot live. Yeah? As you told us, your patient too, he wants to be a good father, he wants to have a family, he wants to be able to work. But the longing to defend, and in his particular way, is stronger. In many situations, thus he fails. Thus now life becomes a struggle. Thus he comes to you. He may mistrust you as well in the beginning. How can he put his faith in you? Well, that has to evolve with time. That has to be enacted between the two of you. An additional complication is that you have said in writing that he feels influenced by strange forces. it is not necessarily so that he wants to be immobile, but he says there is some force, if I understood you well in what you wrote, that influences him. Is that right? Do you recollect writing that, Maria?
No, it's like he feels the legs like he could not move when he speaks about that.
Yes, he wants to move his legs, and there is something preventing him to move his legs.
Yeah, in a way, yeah, we could say that. Yeah.
Then what is with this man that prevents him from moving his legs? Does he experience that as a foreign force in him? Just as you described briefly, that he tends to be rather aggressive with other people. And I got a little bit of the flavor that he experiences this as, I don't want to be aggressive, but there's something about me that makes me do those things. Now, I think diagnostically, it is important to know if that might be a dissociative part of his. If there is a dissociative agent paralyzing his body or influencing him so that he starts to say aggressive things where he feels, but that's not me, that's not I. The diagnostically, what is still open for me is if this man has a dissociative disorder or not. And could you make a remark on that? If he is being aggressive, does he personify the aggressive action? Does he say, I feel very angry and I make those aggressive remarks intentionally? Or does he rather say, I feel influenced?
No, he says, I feel in danger. I feel in danger.
And that's why he says that he makes aggressive remarks.
Yeah, I think so, but I could explore better, of course, yeah.
And that would be a thing to explore, indeed.
Yeah.
How much does he own these actions, or how much does he disown them? If he disowns them, that is, does not personify it. I do not do it, but I feel forced to do it. There's a strange force doing that. Then that might be, let's say in our language, an EP of some sort, an emotional part of his, that influences him as the apparently normal one who wants to live daily life. If he's not dissociative in that sense, then I would say that the mode of longing and striving of being defensive is too strongly developed. It controls his life too much.
Yeah.
But now we can meet him and say, it was life-saving for you, absolutely needed to know who can I trust and who not. Then it would be important to discuss with him that he has done well. He did survive. He has engaged in the action of knowing whom to trust and whom not to trust to a level that he was able to survive. Because now he is classically conditioned. Italians, it's a classically conditioned cue, because Italians, they stand for the other side. In this frame, it would be important to ask him what signs, as you perceive it, signal safety.
Yeah.
Do you trust me or do you mistrust me? And if you trust me a bit, what are the signs that I give that I can be trusted? Would it be possible to help him engage in the action of distinguishing, differentiating between safety and danger in common life?
Yeah.
Because that would be then a major part of therapy. I would go out with him in the street and ask him what cues signal to you that a person is to be mistrusted.
Mm.
I would also set up experiences with him and say that to trust or to not trust, it's not black and white.
Mm.
Many people can be trusted up to a certain point.
Mm.
Okay, I buy something in a shop. I give you 100 euros. How can I be certain that when I buy something that costs 20 euros, that you give me back 80 euros?
Mm.
Does the person do that or not? How can I trust that? And going from very simple situations, go into ever more complex situations and help him to distinguish trustful people from mistrustful people. And get away from the black and white into relativity. Many people can be trusted up to a point. That doesn't mean that you can always trust a person in every sort of situation. Okay. And of course, there's more to say, but I would step into his world. First of all, it is important to preserve your existence. It's important to know safety. You have had your life experiences. They have sort of pointed your life in a particular direction, and now you want to open up new options. And then therapy is about opening those new options, those new ways of dealing with it. Okay, I would like and not to go into the second case, but turn to the next question. And Uta, the floor is yours.
Yes, in the German session, you talk about it's a better term to speak about inactive contemplation or inactive observation than inactivismus.
Yes.
And I ask myself if it is not more comprehensive to speak of inactive experience than of inactive contemplation.
Okay. Yes. I think it's important that we translate the word die inactieve Betrachtung. It should be the approach to things. And approach in English is a very general word. How can I relate to something? And that is not just cognitive. It includes cognition, but it also includes affect, sensation, perception. The idea to not speak about an activism, but the inactive approach is that Varela, Thompson, and Roche did not want to propose another ism. This is how things are. They would much more like to communicate an open approach. It's more eine Haltung. It's a sort of attitude, you could also say, rather than an ism. And that's the reason to speak about an inactive approach.
This point I understand, but I think it's better to speak about experience, erleben, than from Betrachtung. Inactive experience than inactive observation, or like this. You know my point?
Yeah, but I wonder if we do not have a misunderstanding of terms still.
Yes.
Because I'm contemplating the issue. Let's say this. In the inactive approach, what is essential is experience.
Yes, yes.
That's
my point. Or
consciousness. And to experience is to be conscious of something, more or less conscious. Does not need to be a high level conscious. It's a sort of awareness. That's where it all starts, with consciousness, as I also said in the German hour. Consciousness is obviously a very tough concept. It's actually a cluster of things. It's not one thing. I've made some comments on this in the Trinity of Trauma and some other publications. And at the same time, we know what it is. Everyone knows what it is until you try to formulate what it is. But as I said, we start with consciousness, being aware of something at whatever level. And whatever you do in clinical practice, whatever you do in science or in philosophy, it always in the end has to return to that experience. And that is thus also therewith the focus in the enactive approach, experience. Thus in that sense, Uta, yes, it is included. In the term enactive approach that includes that realization that everything starts with awareness, with consciousness. And that very much includes the body. Awareness is not Geist, the mind is not separate from the body. And the body is not separate from the mind.
Yes.
They are the same thing seen in a different light. It's a different attribute, a different property, if you like. And that is, I think, also a very important element in the enactive approach. It is very much embodied, an embodied understanding. How we think, the concepts that we use, for example, they are strongly influenced by being the kind of body that we are. In that sense, it is already interesting to see what verbs we have. The abstract verbs, and you know that very well, I know from you, always go back to, in many, many cases, go back to experience. And to be experienced being the body that we are. Did you already grasp this? Greifen, begreifen. It's embodied. To understand. I have something underneath, I can stand upon it. And so on. You may test that with almost any verb that we use in an abstract fashion, and you can bring it back to its concrete form. Thus we are sensation. And there you also get the idea of sensory motor integration. We sense things and we do things. We do things physically because we are longing. We need to grasp things. Thus here you have already the combination between affect, longing, the sensation, the physical feeling, and the movement. And it's a bodily movement. Because in this way we can approach the matter. To approach, we move forward. We stand back for a while so that we can reflect. And here you start to hear how embodied our language is. And this brings us actually back to Spinoza. The first thing of the mind is the body, the awareness of a body. We are being affected by something that we're not. We stand on the floor. We are not the floor. We stand on it as we couple to the floor in order to stand. And the feeling to stand implies feeling. When we evolve in the womb, we sense ourselves and that which we are not, the umbilical cord. In the beginning, it might be, on the one hand, a symbiosis, but that's not really true. It's already differentiated. There is that which I am and that which I am not. It's an integration, but integration implies differentiation. And I say that purposely because we have spoken in our educations a lot about integration. I may not have stressed sufficiently that integration is not simply putting things together and then losing the elements.
Mhm.
It is also differentiation.
Mhm.
For example, if we talk about presentification,
Mhm.
I am, just as your patient Maria, I am here and now. That is my current experience. And this person differentiates that experience not sufficiently from the past. To him, there's too much integration. He has integrated into his present moment
Yes. Yes. Yes.
his whole life.
Mhm.
He needs to differentiate. People must be mistrusted. Too much integration. No, differentiate. And you could say, okay, in the concept of integration is also the concept of differentiation. Still, in writing the haunt itself, I stressed, Onno and Cassie, let's please write integration and differentiation.
Yes.
And I'm now starting to emphasize that more. Differentiate and couple. Because in coupling, there's not a symbiosis, I and the not I. No, I couple, but I'm not the same. There's coupling and differentiation. And this whole philosophy of Deleuze, this is what brings it also back to the fore more in my mind. It's about differentiation. It's not easy stuff, but it's awfully interesting.
Yes.
And I'm working hard. I'm working hard on getting to understand Deleuze more. Differentiation. Good. Is that sufficient for now, Uta?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, we turn to the next question. Amelia, if present, are you present?
No.
I do not see Amelia. She was there in the previous hour.
We will do that for the next German session. So then we have
Okay.
Susanne.
Susanne.
Oh.
Okay, Susanne Fransen. Hello. Can you formulate your question, Susanne?
Please unmute yourself.
Can you unmute yourself?
Susanne, there you go.
Okay. Okay.
Oh yeah, there you are.
I just use the time now. With this time, I use it. A patient recently asked me what happens if we, the EPs, fusion with others. They are very scared about fusion, verschmelzen with the others. Do we die? And she was so sad. And another patient had a spontaneous fusion. I didn't intervene for this. She just came back and said, oh, my EP, it's called Paul, is not here yet. And the other EPs were very sad about, because this EP was very important in the system.
Okay.
So my question, how can I explain? Maybe I didn't understand it yet either. What happens if the fusion gets, and do they die? Or how can I explain? How would you explain it?
Let's do it like this. Did you have some experiences yesterday, Susanne?
Of course.
Oh, of course, yes, a silly question. Where are those experiences now?
In my memory.
They have not died.
No.
Are they just in your memory?
Yeah, I understand your point. Okay. No, they are just, they're also in my mind. If I, for example, experienced eating yesterday or this morning. So if I think about it, I can experience it in my body. Maybe the taste of the food, maybe, I don't know.
Yes, well, when we remember something, we bring back something that we did before. Because we have an awareness, it's not now, it used to be. We link it, we couple it. Yesterday and today, we have a coupling there. And we differentiate. It's a memory. That's why I know that it's a memory, that it's not now. That's the act of presentification. I can couple myself to something that I experience. And I know that I experience because the present moment is different. I bring the two together. Because we couple ourselves at all times between present and past, and for that matter, future. in coupling ourselves to our past, we are aware that the past has not died. It's there. The patient who has spontaneously integrated one or more EPs, she has not gotten rid of that which the EP was. She will remember it. Previously, I experienced my life in that way as that part of me. And now that part has become part of me. I have taken that part to myself. And in doing that, that part has not disappeared. It has only gotten a new form. It's not I and the EP, I, A, and P, and the EP. No, now it's I'm still A and P, so to speak, because there are more EPs. But with respect to this part, this former EP, it has become me. And in that sense, that former part now lives on as I, as me, as myself. Meaning it has not died at all. It has just taken on, in part, a new form. Now, that is all rather reflective and in part almost philosophical. And thus that will probably not help the EP who's sitting there. This sort of explanation. And then I would therefore now like to talk to you. If you could be that EP, I would now sort of want to talk to you as if I were Suzanne, the therapist, and you are then that EP, to sort of go through the movement of enactive trauma therapy. How do we do that in actually meeting that part? What does the part say? You are that EP now, and you show up in therapy. I am Suzanne, and here we go.
Okay. Yes, maybe I would not be the EP, maybe I would be the A and P of this person, because these are two different situations. Okay. I describe. Okay, I would ask
whatever you do, it's fine with me.
Okay, I would ask you, yes, Susanne, what would happen if my EPs would integrate? I don't want this integration. This is the patient who hasn't integrated yet. The other patient has spontaneously, so it's different patients. Okay. But this patient would say she's very scared about, and this blocks our work now. So that's why I bring it in.
You don't want to integrate. What's the very good point that is what you don't want? On the side, sorry, before continuing, on the side I will make little remarks that are not part of our conversation, but that are meant for the group.
Yes.
Notice that I instantly go for longing. What is the very good reason that you don't want to integrate? Why do you want it? Or in this case, why do you want it not? That's the first thing I do.
I would feel more lonely, and we would miss each other. We are together all the time, so I don't know how to live in another way. And it makes me very sad.
Yes.
And if you want this for me, I would be a little bit scared.
That would be a horrible thing if you would start to do what I want. No. It's up to you. You should do what you want, what you want together. It's not about me. Therapy is not about the therapist.
You told me this all the time, but I don't believe you.
Okay. You mistrust me. What is the very good reason that you mistrust me? Okay. Again, now I hear defense. Now I go into, okay.
I understand your point.
Okay, that is your interest. Okay, what's the very good reason that you mistrust me?
Yeah, it's
First, let's go into to speak with Uta in experience. What is the reason that you could frame that cognitively? But I want to point out now as the therapist, what gives you the feeling? that I am to be mistrusted. I think you will have gone through experiences who've taught you that.
I don't know where the journey goes to. You started with me.
You don't know where the journey goes, right? And you need to know that. You want to know that.
Yes, I think so. I understood you in that sense. We discussed it at the beginning of our therapy.
Yes.
What is the goal? And so I'm not sure if the goal is my goal, but I also know that I have to move on. So that's why I stopped therapy.
Wait a minute. You just said, I have to move on. Who says so?
What?
You said I have to move on. That's what you just said.
That's me. It's a part of me. One part in my side says we have to move on. And I make pressure on myself. I make pressure on you. And then you move on because I pressure you. We know each other a very long time. So I know and I appreciate you are always very engaged and active in our therapy.
Okay, now pause. Now I hear one part makes pressure. That's the longing in that part. Making pressure is the striving. Then I would want to meet that other part. Say, why is it important to move on? That's one thing. And the other thing is, you tell me, the one who's up front now, you don't want to move on because you're scared.
Yes, I'm very scared.
You seem to be having some problems. The one says, move on, and the other says, I don't. I'm scared.
Yes. That's my problem.
Do you talk to one another?
Yes, we have these morning sessions.
Yes.
Have these big morning sessions, and I enjoy it very much. I learned it from you, with you together. So it's a big group, like here, our group, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yes, I appreciate that, and it's certainly not simple. No. I do think it's very good that you do that, because isn't it true that all parts want to be heard? Yes. And when you meet that other part of yours that says you have to move on, do you sense why that is important, so exceptionally important to that part of you?
Yes, because there are parts they don't want to live anymore. I told you about it. And these parts are very hurt, and they cannot wait to die or to move on or something. It's a very difficult part. Make supervision now, Ellert, okay?
Sorry?
We make supervision now, okay?
Well, in a way, but it allows
it's okay.
For us all to show how we get from this abstract thinking in terms of longing and striving and consciousness and materialism and idealism and all that to this very moment where I use the concepts. They guide me.
Okay.
A single concept that has guided me in our conversation is to try and appreciate what is it that you want, what is it that the other part wants.
Yes.
And what I hear is there are different interests, different longings. And now we have moved away from the topic of integration, diffusion, to an inner conflict between dissociative agents. One wants this, the other wants that. And you already meet, which is great progress. And in meeting each other, you still on objects.
I have understood something now as a therapist.
Yes.
What I understood in our conversation now is that the dying is an important topic, because I started with dying, what happens in the fusion, the parts are dying. And now I said, as my patients and understood what she told me, that there are parts who really want to die in real life. They want to die, that the body is dying.
Another longing.
Yes.
I want to die.
Yes.
And then we step into the world of having the longing to die.
Yes.
And
Not
then
hurt me anymore. And yes.
Right. And then I typically ask, as a sort of basic thing I'm tending to do you want to be dead or do you want to find peace and quiet?
Mm.
And
Ellert?
generally the last. Yes.
We still have one more question.
Okay.
And it's 6:11.
Okay.
So I don't know, Susanna, was your
Yes, okay. I'm more than content. I had a very good supervision now.
Okay. No, it's fine. It just now demonstrates, and that can be then the last remark. Now you go into dying.
Yes.
Don't be afraid about that as a therapist. Be very open-minded as you are open to anything. What it is. The patient should not live because you want her to live. Now the issue is, I want to find calmness. How can I do that? And the only thing that this patient can think at certain parts is to die. Other parts have a different idea. Thus, it's still a conflict. Dissociation is very much a conflict of longing and striving. Good. Next question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
from Anke. Apparently we missed your incoming question. Sorry for that, Anke. Can you please unmute yourself?
Hi.
Yes. Hi, Anke.
My question is how to prioritize when there are so many burning topics like suicidality and self-harm and eating restrictions and sleep restrictions and so much external pressure from health insurance and all kinds of things. And still starting out with the patient and having limited time.
Yes, of course. It can be very hard to do therapy in a sort of free atmosphere if there's a lot of pressure also from outside. Here again, the trouble is, how can we integrate those different interests? There's this, there's that, and there's that, and there's that. Would it be an idea to, first of all, put them all on a list? All the longings and the strivings, all the affections that are there. To put them on a list. What part wants what? What dissociative agent longs and strives for what? What does your social environment want from you? Technically, financially, socially. Okay, what influences are there all along? And then having all those longings, say to the patient, how should we deal with that? How would you want to deal with that? And then probably in the dissociative frame, it is one part says this, another part says that. That brings it back to the basic problem. Apart from all external influences that also have a role, it is still the issue, what do I, as the whole individual organism that I in the end am, deal with all those different interests, longings. And that brings it back to the communication between the parts, the conversation between the parts. Given all these different internal, so to speak, and external longings, how do we navigate that? And then the parts will have to talk with one another. And the better they do that, and the more manageable the situation becomes, the more conflicts they have in that regard, the more difficult things will be. And we as therapists cannot solve that issue. What we can solve, or perhaps in any case deal with, is to say, we have 20 sessions left. There's no more money. We would want to continue this therapy for 10 more years. That's not what is possible. And that's not something that we can influence. We may long for it, but our striving will not be sufficient to create that situation. Thus, we then as therapists have to also remind the patient of the boundaries, just as we have to remind ourselves from the boundaries. If the patient is still influenced very strongly by other people, also in the sense of being abused, being neglected, being intruded on in whatever way, we have to be realistic about that. Realistic stands here for we must appreciate if we or the project of therapy is sufficiently powerful to exert an influence. We are sometimes in situations with patients where we must simply conclude that therapy is impotent, is unable to change a very hard situation. And that's not too dissimilar from saying we have a patient and she has a serious cancer. Now, whatever we may be able to do as therapists, we cannot heal the cancer. And if the cancer is a social cancer, and societal cancer, we cannot change that. But we can discuss the issue with all the parts that are there and say, here we have this limitation. And we must then deal with that. Is that a bit of an answer for you?
Yes, thank you.
What have I said that you have not already thought yourself? If there was anything that I added.
I didn't make a list. The issues that we only started talking to the parts or getting them to talk to each other, because the patient had learned for more than 10 years from therapists, from psychiatrists, that there's no such thing as dissociation and that she has borderline disorder. And so I had to do a lot of relationship work to help the parties that it's okay to speak and to be seen.
Yes.
And but we haven't made a list yet, and I think it's important to say, okay, we have these many sessions left, and then there's a limit.
Yes, yes. Just as there are limits to our hour, it's almost over.
Yes.
And I would like to continue for 3-4 more hours, happily. And we must say, no, also this project has its limits. We can do some things, we cannot do it all. However, our encounters will have a continuation. Next month, there will be a new meeting. And as a preparation for that meeting, it is good to present your questions in advance so that we can organize it a little bit. And also in the next hour, we cannot solve all the problems of the world. Yes, we can solve most problems, but not all of them. Thus, let's simply continue. Is there any urgent thing that anyone present here would like to state, remark, ask? We have 1 minute.
I have a question about the concept, Kirande or Alet. How do we handle these questions you put on LinkedIn? So I was not sure, do you expect everybody to answer, or is it just an offer to answer? So I was insecure, but 150 people cannot answer every question.
Is that so? Where does that thought come from? Which longing is behind it? No, if you
I was not sure what you are expecting. Maybe I'm too...
well, we're just offering people different ways of learning.
Yeah.
Generally, thinking about things helps people to better get a grasp of new ideas or ideas that, you're not too familiar with. So, and that's the reason behind these discussion questions. It's also interesting to see how others answer that question. So yes, 150 people can answer these questions. Of course, not every month you have as much time. So it's not a must. We don't check it. I have asked Ella to look at the answers and then occasionally select some answers that he finds particularly insightful or worthwhile to share. And that is what I also extra now upload in the e-Academy part. But yeah, no, we won't, your grade won't be affected by it, neither will you receive a grade. So it's really just study material.
Yeah, thus we have indeed different formats. There are the discussions group, the community, where you discuss things with one another in a dynamic fashion, and there will be some answers that may be helpful and perhaps also some ideas that you find less helpful, whatever. That's a sort of self-organizing group. And I will not be involved too much, simply because I don't have the time to do that, to go into all these remarks. We hope that you will be an inspiration to one another. In these hours, these monthly hours, we can address some of the questions that you put up here in this frame. And there's the more general learning from videos that we will be recording. And we start somewhere. We started with longing, striving, action, and passion. We continue with discussions of what is integration and what is dissociation. We take it ever more. We build it up in steps. And the steps that we also go through in the teaching situations, but the teaching situations are not recorded. And the advantage Kiranda taught me of having the videos is that you can watch them again. And I try to do it in systematic steps so that you can track me where I'm going, whether you're more advanced or more a beginner. So that over time, we get a whole bunch of videos leading you into eventually ever more complex things. I'm not saying that the basics are simple. They're not. They're actually already very complex, but I try to present it in a way that everyone can track. In the awareness of what, and perhaps that's a nice way of concluding our current meeting, what Schopenhauer said. There is no such thing, there's no thing more complex than trying to communicate very complex things in a way so that everyone must understand it. Okay. I feel challenged to try and help you and myself to deal with complexities of life and patients that we're dealing with. There is one more thing regarding the questionnaire, right, Kiranda?
Yes, well, of course, as we are learning as well on how to manage this e-Academy, we would like to send you an extra questionnaire about how it is till now and how we can make things better, more interactive, or less confusing. I don't know, anything. It will be short.
Okay, then that's it, folks. Have a wonderful day. Have a lovely weekend. And looking forward to meet you in this frame or another frame. I greet you all. Kiranda, thanks for moderating. Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.